3 p.m. I hereby call to order the meeting of the Civilian Appeals Board, an organization set to review appeals made by citizens who are unsatisfied with internal affairs investigation by the Grand Rapids City Police. I believe we start out with a roll call.
All right. Russell Olmsted.
Present.
Present. Michelle Williams.
Present.
Present. Sophia Brewer. Out here. Jordan Cross. Reginald Howard. Jason Osborne.
Present.
Dean Pacific.
Present.
Brandon Davis. Okay. Douglas Maliski, our new member. Present. Perfect. Got you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the August 21st, 2024 minutes. However, I don't see a copy of them.
Yeah, I don't see a copy of that either. So as you may know, we've gone through some recent staff changes. We're digging through the stuff to try to find where those were.
Okay.
And we'll get those for a future meeting.
Okay, so we'll table that for now, pending a further meeting on it. Item number 4 is the board liaison report.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all. It's been a while. And there's some people in the audience today. Look at us, right? But grateful to see everyone here. The first thing I wanted to do was just some staffing updates from several departments and also an introduction of our newest board member. So since our last meeting, there has been an appointment to the Civilian Appeals Board. So we'd like to welcome you, sir, to the board and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and maybe say something about yourself to the board.
Thank you. My name is, contrary to what it says on the name tag, it's Doug Mileski. I am a lawyer. I don't know why that got added on the end, but I work on the west side on Seward, and I have long been interested in this. It was actually Dean who recommended that I apply for the position and get involved, and so I did, and the city appointed me in early December. Thank you.
Well, welcome. We look forward to working with you. As I heard you chatting before the meeting, we'll make sure that you get the necessary training and all those things to be onboarded as we move forward throughout the rest of the year. There's also been staffing changes both in the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability and at GRPD. So let's start. We'll do some GRPD introductions as well at this time.
Hello, everybody. Those that haven't met me, I'm Lieutenant Nathan Mead. I have the pleasure of serving as the commander of the Internal Affairs Unit. In our unit, we've had 2 additions and 1 subtraction. So Lieutenant Daly, former Sergeant Daly, has moved along. He has now been promoted, and he's now at the watch commander position. And then I now added Sergeant Kyle Pressler, who came from us from the special response team. He was a operator on the special response team, then got promoted to sergeant and spent his time there. And I also have added Sergeant Dave Casban, who comes from us from patrol position as a sergeant. Prior to that, he was in the detective unit, where he investigated a number of crimes, including major case. So those are my 2 changes.
Well, thank you for the update and welcome. All right, so there's been some staffing changes in the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability as well. First, we'd like to introduce Nick Durek. Nick is, I keep saying Nick is the new Brendan, and Nick says that Brendan is the old Nick, but Nick has joined our staff to work as the Oversight and Investigations Manager for OPA, fulfilling the same responsibilities that Mr. Arnold had before he left to go to Kent ISD. So welcome. And we also have Mr. Robert Kyle. And Mr. Kyle is serving as the Executive Assistant in OPA and therefore will also serve as the individual working as the Secretary for this board. So those are the staffing updates that we'll make at this time. In addition to those things, we have a meeting schedule that you'll see in front of you. These are the proposed meeting dates for 2025. Again, these are, it follows the normal schedule, which we have previously, the third Wednesday of every month from 4 to 6 p.m. And at some point, we would like to entertain a motion to approve these dates for the upcoming calendar year. Mr. Chair, if you think it's appropriate now, we could do it now.
If you're ready now, I think we can do that. Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting schedule for 2025?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
It doesn't have to be on this date, especially with new members and all of that, but I would like us to be able to look this over at a future meeting to be able to highlight some ideas of when we're looking at if there's any additional training or updated trainings so that we can plan for that around our own schedules and vacations and stuff in the new year. So
Wise advice. So it's looking at this, everyone has vacations and guarantee there's going to be some conflicts here somewhere. So the quicker we can get those dates out, the better. All right, there's no further discussion. I'll take it for a vote. All in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing no opposition, I believe that motion passes.
Thank you. Okay. And the last thing that's part of our board liaison report for today is related to a request from this board to provide a communication to city staff. I know that there was some discussion in committee related to that. The labor relations manager is also present today and had the opportunity, although to review that letter now as of today, and also was brought up to speed on it based on past requests. So seeing that it wasn't a specific agenda item, I thought it was best to discuss it during my report. If you'd like to hear from labor relations related to it, we can do that, or however you choose to proceed, Mr. Chair.
Well, frankly, as being on the subcommittee, my intention was to put some drafts in front of the board members to review and discuss. Frankly, I should have had this together at least a week before, so we had some time to do it. My intention at this point was lacking those materials for the board to review as a whole. We're going to table that until next month when I can be a little more proactive on it, get that stuff ahead of time, and we can all have a chance to review it beforehand rather than spring it on last minute.
Sounds perfect to me. I will add that with the permission of the labor relations manager, we did discuss this, and I know there's some discussion about whether or not there was collective bargaining implications to it. It's the position of labor. Is it right for me to go for it? Okay, it's the position of labor that these do not impact collective bargaining. The request to stagger terms would not impact collective bargaining. So to the extent that that answers your question and you want us to take further action, you can let us know. But if you want to proceed with the letter or something like that, of course, that's in the board's purview as well.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, with that concludes my report for today.
Okay. Well, and it appears that we are on to item number 5 on the agenda, the hearing on appeal case CR 24-033.
As we begin that space, I'll start by noting that as this is Mr. Molesky's first meeting, and he has not gone through the necessary training to be heard regarding this. Mr. Molesky, we will ask you to abstain for participating in this. I'm sure that was communicated or understood, but we want the record to reflect that part. And Mr. DeReich will actually give overview of the facts of the case. And then after that, we'll turn to the police department as normal for any questions that the board may have.
Very good.
Thank you. Good afternoon. On June 10th of 2024, police officers were dispatched to the location of 936 Front Avenue, apartment 206 in Grand Rapids. Officer Douglas Grandy was first to arrive at that location. The report was for a stabbing incident between a male and a female. When officers went into the apartment building, they were going down the hallway. They heard an argument between a male and a female as they were approaching the area of apartment 206. When they got to that location, to the door, they were unable to hear any noise at that point. They did knock and announce their presence multiple times. They then made entry forcibly into that apartment as the door was locked. They did not locate anybody inside that apartment. and then they eventually turned the scene over to building maintenance and/or management. It was discovered after a complaint was filed by Mr. Tompkins, the owner of that apartment, and the subsequent investigation by Internal Affairs, that dispatch had actually given the wrong apartment number to officers through their dispatch. The call-in was for apartment 205, and dispatch relayed apartment 206. Mr. Tompkins also included in his complaint that there was $40 missing from his coffee table, in addition to the broken door and a broken closet door. Internal Investigations also looked into, or Internal Affairs also looked into the missing money by reviewing body camera video, and they observed that when the officers entered the apartment, there was a clear view of the coffee table, at which point no money was visible at all on the coffee table. Officers also, I would note, when they were making their approach to the apartment, did locate small smears of blood in the apartment hallway, which they believed related to the stabbing as they were making that approach. And the Internal Affairs officer was Sergeant Joe Daly.
Thank you for the overview. Just one fact I think we should add is it was Kent County's dispatch that relayed the information initially. So the address that was provided to the officers came initially from Kent County, and the call was received from them.
That's correct. The caller was presumably outside of the city because it was not the person or any person involved in the actual stabbing. So that went to Kent County initially and was relayed, the wrong address was relayed to GRPD 911. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Chair, we'll turn it over to the board for any questions that it may have of GRPD.
All right, as indicated, the floor is open for any board member that wishes to ask any questions.
That summary that was provided is pretty spot on and accurate. I have nothing more to really add. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to address those.
My understanding from the materials we've been provided is that the unit that the caller had indicated was the problematic one where the crime may have been occurring was 205.
Correct.
But 206 was the number that got relayed to the officers. Is that correct?
Correct. So Grand Rapids and the Kent County Sheriff's Department each house a dispatch center for this area. This call presumably originated from outside of the city limits and was placed by way of 911, so it was routed to the Sheriff's Department. Because of the emergency nature of the call, it's common practice for the call taker at the Sheriff's Department to type this information into that CAD system and then send it over to us electronically, as well as patch that caller over to one of our call takers. So all of the call information auto-populates in our dispatch center, who then request additional information from the caller. In this particular call, they would prefer to keep that caller on the line, and then behind the scenes, they send that exact same screen down to the patrol officers. So the address information that was typed in from the Sheriff's Department was not manipulated in any way electronically for the information that was given to the officers, if that makes sense.
And then, other than the obvious error in having gone to the incorrect door as a result of the incorrect information, were the procedures that were followed and the actions taken by the officers all consistent with their training and with department policies?
Yes.
So I'm fascinated by these processes, by the way, about how this all shares. So the call was taken by another 911 call center.
Yes.
The information, the caller relayed the 205 apartment.
Correct.
But it was typed in by that other 911 operator as 206. Is that
Correct.
Okay. Then that was forwarded to Kent County 911.
No, the intake was, the initial call intake was completed by a call taker at the Kent County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
In their dispatch center. They populate that information into a shared system and then send it over to our dispatchers, who then dispatch that out to a patrol unit.
So the screen that got shared from 911 to the patrol officer had the 206 apartment number on it?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a policy governing patrol officers need to verify important information such as location?
No.
Okay.
I had two questions as I went through. And thinking about those policies and procedures, I had actually emailed Phil about this too. I'm wondering what criteria are GRPD trained to use when determining whether or not to force entry? I understand that in this particular case, there was blood on the wall, and I read through all of the report on that. But just thinking to the training that your officers would receive, what criteria would be part of that training, and how would that have aligned? You've said that it was aligned with the training and policy and procedures. I'm just wanting to know specifically what are those?
Well, I guess it was evident through my investigation that these officers, that team of officers led by Officer Doug Grandy, identified that there was a potential emergency taking place, potential loss of life or serious injury. They relied on their training and were reasonable with their decision-making based on the location given, in addition to the presence of blood in the hallway. And while traveling down that hallway, hearing of a male and female arguing, that when they got to apartment 206, after getting no response there, after a reasonable amount of time, they decided to force entry using a search warrant exception.
And can you talk a little bit about that training that they would have been leaning on in order to
This
make
is
those decisions?
career-long training that would start back in the police academy, through in-house training, as well as legal updates throughout the year. There's no specific training that I could recall.
Okay. Are there particular policies or procedures that you would have expected your officers to be thinking of and considering when they were making these decisions?
I would expect them to act, I guess, in accordance with the law.
Okay.
I'm switching gears a little bit regarding the securing of a scene and the residents after entering. It seemed to be clear throughout through the materials that we saw on the body worn camera that they realized on scene that this may well possibly not been the correct address that was relayed to them after entering. And after discussing with the management, hotel, or not hotel, but apartment building management. In that sort of instance, is there any sort of policy or any policy in general regarding securing that type of scene when it is something that is perhaps a wrong address in that sort of situation, to make sure that when forcing an entry that someone there can maintain the scene for the individual?
No, they made attempts to contact the resident of the apartment and then left it in the custody of a person of authority from that apartment complex.
Okay.
That person relayed to them that they were going to secure that door, and once it's left in the possession of a person of authority, there's no reason for us to continue to stick around.
Would that, so that is, okay. So it would be different if it were somebody's home rather than in a rented property?
No, we would try to identify the owner, somebody, there's instances where we can't locate homeowners or business owners if there's a burglary. So maybe we're forced to leave it in the possession of another family member if we can identify a person or a responsible neighbor. But there are certain cases, and I'm sure if you look hard enough, there are certain circumstances where we can't find a homeowner or a person that's responsible. So we secure it the best we can and keep an eye on it until a person is found.
And just one other question regarding that. If that is the case, would securing that with the person of authority on scene, does that generally mean just securing it with the management staff and making sure they're aware of the situation, or does it mean that having another person up at the actual apartment and in the scene to prevent some unwanted party from going in and maintaining entrance to that property?
No, once apartment staff was at the apartment, then notification was appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I wondered in terms of the follow-up after the name of the individual whose apartment it was had been obtained, in the conversation that took place, there was indication that he had been recently in the building and was likely in another apartment in the same building. I didn't see or read about any attempts to contact him in that place before the officers left. So I'm just kind of piggybacking off of what Russell was saying. I'm wondering what expectations or policies, procedures, whatever the case may be, would be or could be referenced in terms of, it feels like that would have been an opportunity to let him know what had happened and possibly prevent frustration and other escalation for.
It's my understanding they did attempt to locate him within that building and were unsuccessful.
Okay.
They checked for other phone numbers. He was unavailable by phone. They had no other option but to leave it in the custody of apartment management.
Yeah, I just didn't see that documented, and it seemed to be different than what I viewed in the one body cam. So.
Officer, you mentioned a few moments ago something about a warrant exception. So we're going to test my knowledge, I think, as much as yours here. My understanding is that under the Fourth Amendment, law enforcement needs a warrant to conduct any searches or seizures as a general rule. But there's exceptions to that, and one of those being exigent circumstances. Is that your understanding?
Well, there's also an emergency exception.
Emergency exception, okay. What sort of things would constitute an emergency exception to the search? Or
A potential loss of life, limb, or serious injury.
And was that the concern in this case?
Yes, that was through the presence of blood in the hallway, the original caller stating that her son was stabbed, the audible argument from around the corner in the vicinity of that apartment. And then that was evident through the search that you could see on the body-worn camera footage. As these officers cleared that apartment, they only looked in places where a human body could be concealed. They didn't open kitchen drawers or anything like that. It was strictly just looking for injured people. They realized that it was empty, and as soon as it was reasonable to do so, they left that apartment.
Right. So fair to say, though, the reason for kicking in that door was that they believed and were told that there was someone that was possibly injured in there and
Yes.
could be potentially dying or dead.
Yes.
I have one other question regarding just what is policy and procedure for the GRPD around a situation like this or any forcible injury where there is going to be some sort of damage to property because of the necessity for a forced entry. What is the policy regarding is there a specific forms that need to be filled out, pictures that need to be taken, or what is the policy around those sorts of things?
A police report needs to be documented, yes, and this damage that was done was covered in a police report. Management there, from past practice, is aware that damage caused by police, they know how to file that claim
Okay.
through risk management. I'm sure that was explained to risk management, but this is not the first time. I've been a part of search warrants in that building. Management is well aware on how to seek reimbursement. And as soon as I intook this report, I got in touch with OPA to get them in touch with risk management, and it's my understanding Mr. Tompkins has been made whole.
So that is
has the apartment.
Yeah, and that's just a curiosity on my point of trying to understand the process. That's the standard process for everything that is done.
Yes.
On these. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions at this time? All right, hearing none, I think we're prepared to move to motions. All right, I'll pose the first question to the board. Is there a motion to determine that sufficient information exists for the board to decide whether Officer Douglas Grandy illegally entered the complainant's apartment?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll take it to a call. All in favor? Aye? Do
Aye.
Aye.
we have a procedural issue?
No. Generally, I think we do that by roll call. Or,
Oh, is it?
Yeah, roll call.
You need a roll call vote
Yep.
for that?
I don't know if we have to. But
That's how we've traditionally done it. I'll turn to council to say whether or not we have to, but.
You may. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, I think we've made it this far.
Yes.
I think I'll try the more traditional method for the next motion. All right. As we proceed this motion, are there any opposed? All right. Hearing no opposition, I believe the motion passes. The next question, I'm going to ask if there is a motion to affirm the internal affairs finding that the allegation of illegal entry against Officer Douglas Grandy is exonerated.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Could you repeat it one more time for the motion on hand?
Sure. Well, and again, I'm reading here.
Yep.
The question is there a motion to affirm? I believe the motion on the table is there a motion to affirm the internal affairs finding that the allegation of illegal entry against Officer Douglas Grandy is exonerated? So anyway, in other words, the motion is that we will find that the internal affairs finding is correct.
Second.
Okay. Right. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
I want to say on the record that I think it's extremely unfortunate that the address was miscommunicated in this situation, and I think it's extremely unfortunate that unfortunately the way that the system was forced to handle this in this situation because of where the call came into Kent County and then being transferred, that sort of lack of clarity around that happened. I hope that that this can be taken as an opportunity to look at some of those policies and to be able to see if there's some way that it can be double checked as far as these addresses. Now, granted, I know that is only going to be if people can stay on the line and answer those types of questions in situations that are extremely stressful and developing in a second's notice. But to try to prevent damage and potential harm to community members by somebody accidentally hitting the wrong key on a keyboard. I think that this is, in my opinion, not a violation of the Fourth Amendment because of the officer's understanding of harm that could be being done to somebody under duress and potentially a stab wound, and in that sort of situation, they need to move in and do what they believe is going to help people and save people's lives. But I just hope that there can be something that could possibly be looked at outside of policy that doesn't allow for people to have their homes accidentally gone into by mistake.
I'll add on that that I appreciate the appellant's frustration with coming home to a door that's kicked in. And certainly, we obviously expect the highest standards of accuracy, particularly in a life or death situation. I don't see any error here that can be levied against Grand Rapids Police Department. Clearly some error with dispatch in writing down the wrong number. And as frustrating as it is to have the wrong door kicked in, I think it's even scarier to see that someone could potentially have been hurt or dying, and the police officer didn't make it into that door. I mean, you can see on the video, door right across the hallway was the correct one, and who knows what was going on in there. Hopefully, I never heard anything on the follow-up on that. Hopefully, everything turned out all right. It's not before this board to consider. I will note that having reviewed the the multiple body cam videos. I certainly appreciate the actions of Grand Rapids Police who entered the apartment, did a quick job of searching through it to find a person that was in distress, and it immediately becoming apparent that there was no such person. They exited the vehicle without further disturbing the apartment. Again, I appreciate the frustrations of the appellant, but in a real life situation, mistakes happen, particularly when we're moving quickly in life or death scenarios, and I personally don't see a reason to alter the defining of internal affairs.
I concur with everything you guys have said. I also view this as very unfortunate, and I also want to recognize that, you know, in our communities across the United States, we have our residents don't feel comfortable and don't feel safe, and so what Mr. Tompkins communicated in his appeal is something I think we need to really think about. And so, from my vantage, I would have liked to understand and know what the follow-up to find him was in order to communicate. As you said, coming home to a violation of that nature, in this case, in an attempt to potentially save someone's life, it was done with, you know, the best intentions according to the law. It was not a legal entry. And at the same time, I think we've missed an opportunity to build community. And so I guess I don't know if there's an opportunity to have policies and procedures where we can look at notification that is more personal in a case like this, where there was misinformation, where there was unfortunate circumstances. I think we want to continue to build those relationships. So, thank you.
Is there any additional comment? All right, seeing none, I think we can put this to a vote. We'll do a roll call vote this time.
All right, Russell Olmsted, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Michelle Williams.
Yes.
All right, Jason Osborne
Yes.
and Dean Pacific.
Yes.
So maybe the record should reflect that Mr. Molesky has abstained from both votes related to this matter.
Let us reflect.
Motion passes. With that, can I I'll ask for chair permission to make comment?
By all means.
Thank you. So in reviewing this case, I think it's important to note that when there are cases when GRPD does something wrong, in my assessment as the leader of the Office of Oversight and Public Accountability, I voice it. I am loud about it, and I think that's my job and appropriate. I also think it's important for me to be clear when I review cases and see that there has not been actions that were wrong on the part of GRPD, and I think this is one of those cases. In review of this case, it is clear to me that the Grand Rapids Police Department acted appropriately. They did not violate the law or policy, that they were responding in an effort to protect the life of another, that they also went in and went out at an appropriate amount of time, and I think those things are important to know. I also understand the frustration of the complainant in this case, or the appellant in this case. As a community member, I would be frustrated as well. I hear the comments of the board as it relates to opportunities to build trust or building policies around how we navigate some of those other spaces. I also understand the staffing concerns of police managing that. But I think it's important for us to note both when police do a great job, just like I would if I thought police did not do well in a circumstance. And in this case, it is my position that the police acted appropriately, and I appreciate their handling of this case.
All right, I believe the next item on the agenda is old business. I have an item, but if you have anything particular to jump on, I'll let you go first. Okay. We alluded to this earlier. We had a meeting of the subcommittee to discuss change the bylaws. Those are in the works. It sounds like we are essentially on the cusp of having a proposal for the board, but I just put the materials together just a few hours too late to get it on the agenda for today. So that will table that to one more meeting. Hopefully, we'll have a meeting here in January, and we can get that resolved and finally make some action on that. I know it's been in the works for a long time, so I'm anxious to get that going. That's all the old business I have. There's no further old business. We have an item here for open discussion.
Maybe I could offer one response to Ms. Williams' comment. I look forward to having a conversation at upcoming trainings about some of the challenges of creating policies around dynamic situations. I think that the training department and the internal affairs department is anxious to listen and hear some of your thoughts too. But I think that historically it's been challenging, and that's why we constantly hear terms like totality of the circumstances, reasonable officer standard, and things like that. And as you articulated some of the reasons for your decision, I think you kind of walked through those totality of the circumstances, what was reasonable in this case, and how did that impact your judgment of the officer's compliance with legal standards. And I anticipate that the Internal Affairs Department did a similar walkthrough. But as I asked myself after receiving your email, what would a policy look like for when it would be appropriate to use force to enter someone's apartment? I just had to continue to have kind of a question mark in my head. I'm not saying that there aren't best practices or potential policies to consider, but when you have dynamic situations that really are dependent on a totality of the circumstances, sometimes policies can jeopardize quick responsive action. So looking forward to future conversations around that and maybe exploring that a little bit more.
Any other open discussion? All right, turning now to public comment. Any members of the community wish to present a comment to the board? Once again, seeing none, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. There's nothing further. I believe we'll stand in adjournment until January.